Now, I am still very much in the camp of Ten Hag out, unfortunately. The FA Cup win, despite it being an absolutely fantastic managerial performance for him in that 90 minutes, I'm still edging towards replacing based on pretty much the other 59, 60 games of the season. However, I'm going to give the Dutchman some credit for an absolutely tremendous tactical setup. And in today's video, I've got two tactics for you. Both are doing very, very similar rules. We're going to dive into a couple of tactical little adjustments that he made for the game, how that looks in FM. I said two tactics for you as well, one with an F9 and then as a strikerless, and you can make your mind up which one you want to use. All right, guys. Let's get into it. Okay, so this is what we're wanting to create. This was the key to the success. Obviously, we're not really going to go too much into the possession statistics because the numbers, as you can see on screen, were remarkably low in terms of possession numbers. So it's important to see how they kind of stopped City from playing. And this is how they did it with this screenshot here. So we're looking at a 4-2-4. As you can see, we've got the left back, Dalot, is actually out of shot at the moment. We've got Amrabat and Kobe Menu picking up the 2-8 in Foden and De Bruyne. Very much man-to-man in there. Martinez trying to tag onto Haaland. Varane covering. And then the two fullbacks looking out for the two fullbacks generally, with the midfield four of Garnacho and Rashford doing the wide areas. And then pretty much McTominay and Fernandes. And I'm going to say a word. We're going to say false nine because that's the word that's been used constantly. However, the tactic that I have put together that I think is the better replication, we're not playing with a false nine. However, it's important to kind of do both. So we've got both tactics for you today, one with a false nine and one without. But this is how we're going to go down the system of trying to make it look like this out of possession. And if you look at the screenshot, this is our out of possession using one of my tactics. As you can see, it's not bad. I don't think it's bad at all. It's really compact as well, which is really good. Something that they were trying to do to stop Manchester City getting them balls into those central areas and forcing kind of the fullbacks to be the ones to have to create in wide areas, in particular in that first half before Doku came on. Very important as well was the pressing triggers, in particular of Bruno, who did it often, and something we're going to put into our opposition instructions as well. So as you can see, Bruno steps out, presses Rodri. As it goes back to the two centre-halves, they then make that 4. If we just watch again, you can see at the start of the video, as it goes into Rodri as a trigger press, it goes back out to the centre-half in John Stones, and then they go in to make a 4. So that's what we're trying to get into the game. So that's something we're going to do with our opposition instructions. For the Patreons, both tactics are available for you on the Patreon. Link down in the description to that if you want to support the channel. Muchly appreciated. I will go through all the player instructions, team instructions, play individual sort of like player changes to the roles, everything, so you can copy it in to your FM Save yourself. But if you want to support the channel like over 100 other people are doing every single month, that'd be tremendously appreciated. Check out the link down in the description. Okay, so the two tactics I've got for you, one is that strikerless one, where we're trying to get that 4-2-4 shape, and then the other one, as you could see, is using Fernandes as an actual F9, and I'm going to show you a couple of clips that I think shows you the problems with the F9 in terms of having it as a true replication to what Ten Hag was trying to get on the day. However, I thought I would include it because he does pick up some tremendous positions. I'm starting a new Let's Play series on the channel.
Yes! That's awesome!
In about a week's time, and having a philosophy of a style of play, and I'm just loving the movement of the F9. So we'll kind of go through a few clips of showing you how good the F9 is, but really I do want to focus on this one here, and in particular how it looks in possession, out of possession, the movements in particular. The one main man we're trying to kind of nail here is Fernandes. A couple of things as well. Remember what we said at the start, we're going to trigger press the Rodri and the DMs. Now our first game of the season is against Wolves. So what we're going to actually do in the opposition instruction, slightly different because of them playing with a back three. But what we are going to do is, as you can see, trigger press off for the goalkeeper and the 3 centre-halves. So we're going to drop off. That will then help us make that line of 4. And I will show you a clip in a minute to prove that. And then what we may do as well, we will probably press. They were kind of playing with that double pivot City of Kovacic and Rodri. So what we are going to do is go Lamina, because they're the double pivot, and Gomez, always struggle press. So back off. As soon as that ball goes in, we're going in to try and engage and try and nick it and try and win it. You know, Scott, McTominay, and Bruno Fernandes were really good at the weekend of just kind of getting little toes in to try and nick possession, intercepting maybe a couple of sloppy passes, in particular in the first half. Okay, so we've set them up. Now, it's very important because I always get a little bit of criticism with people telling me that certain tactics are not a particular shape and they're not a 4-3-3, it's a 4-2-3-1. And it's very important to understand that this page right here on screen is your out of possession. So when you're setting a team up out of possession, and we want to set Man United up in this 4-2-4, you need to set it up like this. The other one has its issues because even though it's an F9 and in possession, you will see Bruno, and I'll show you some clips, he'll drop in and get on the ball. He starts too high, and when the ball is in our defensive third and we're defending quite deep, he stays too high. And when Man United were defending on Saturday, it was more of this shape here. When it was down in a low block, these guys were back down into their own half, but it was always a line of 4 as much as possible. So that's something to be wary of. The in-possession stuff can change depending on the player roles and the player instructions and the support role, attack role, defend role. All that can change your in-possession structure. I may actually do a video of that down the line, so if you'd like to see that, let me know down in the comments. Right, so we've done the opposition instructions. Ignoring their back three, we are going to, however, press when that ball goes into those 2 pivot players. Okay, and the first video is us getting the ball back. So we're not pressing Kilman because he's centre half, but as soon as it then goes into Lamina, we're pouncing in when we're pressing, and we end up getting a corner from it early on against Wolves. If we just bring it back, watch. There's been a turnover in possession, but we're not pressing. We've got that line of 4 in, as you could see. McTominay then steps in. That pass into Lamina is the trigger, and then we're going and transitioning really, really well. Okay, another clip from the Man United, from the Cup final itself. We're just going to watch the role of Fernandes and his support role. So as you can see, he's kind of always in and around the middle of the pitch. He's not too high as playing as an F9. He's floating around. He's kind of tagged onto Kovacic there. If we just bring it back again, he's picking up spaces to get short passes from Amrabat, and he's tagging on. So that's what we're trying to create. He's not getting too high. And with his role in my system, we've managed just to create this a little bit. So as you can see, he's just hovering around the double pivot. In front of him is important. So he's got his player with his back to goal, and he's just recycling the ball really well for us. Once again, not getting too high. There he's in a really good position in that little bit of maybe a little half space, finding them little pockets extremely well. Now, if we look at the Manchester United passing network from the game, from StatsBomb, as you can see, he's pretty much on the centre of the pitch. So I tweaked a little bit, and I thought we kind of needed him maybe at first to be on attacking playmaker and attack, but to get him holding and just playing with his back to goal a little bit and maybe not going beyond too quickly, I thought the support role with Scotty, as you can see, being the AM on attack. Obviously, we're going to get natural depth to our play with the positions of Rashford and Garnacho, who we've both got on attack. And the next one is, it's come for a corner. Bruno's taking it. It's coming to the penalty area. Jose Sar's taking it. And we just look at Fernandes' position now. So he's trying to get back in to make that 4. So this is his AP on support. And he's going back and he's going back. We often found him helping with counter-attacks. Look at the position again. He's staying in front of that holding midfielder. He's not going too far forward. And that's the big difference we get between that and him playing as the false 9, which I'm going to show you in a minute. So we're getting that really good supporting role, getting back in to make the double pivot as much as he possibly can. And then him trying to get back in to make that 4-2-4 out of possession. Okay, so the tactic itself, the first variation, the Ten Hag FA Cup, we've got sweeper, keeper, and Arne on attack, no player instructions. Very well, he's starting to, it was weird that Manchester United tried to play, they didn't go long, we didn't have a Højlund down the centre of the pitch, so they did try and play out from the back when they could. Onana was tremendous at the weekend of just taking that little bit of pressure off. The 2 fullbacks, we've both gone fullback on support. Now, I did have Dalot as an inverted to start with, but he was just inverting a little bit too much. What you could do, because he's naturally right-footed and comes in a little bit, in possession, you could potentially put Sitnara on, but I've left them both blank in terms of their fullback support roles. Didn't engage much in terms of going forward, very much keeping that line at the back and just supporting the 2 forward players in those wide areas in terms of Rashford and Garnacho. Varane, central defender on defend. Martinez, ball-playing defender on defend, did like to break lines, especially on he was trying his best to break lines with passes, firing it into Menu, firing it into those 2 10s in terms of McTominay and Fernandes. Amrabat's an interesting one. He did float around a bit. However, I have got the screenshot of him now, and I might have another one actually, of him dropping in to make a 3 at the back. So often dropping into that half-back position. You could put that as a ball-winning midfielder on defend. I do like the back 3 that it forms with the Amrabat, and at the same time as well, it does then just push your fullbacks on a little bit more because of that back 3 coming in. Varane and Martinez split, or even Amrabat was often dropping into that right centre-back role. It doesn't now always. The issue we had with the half-back role was that sometimes it would just drop into the centre. However, now, in FM24, we're getting it a lot more realistic with him now sometimes dropping in. He'll drop into the middle, but he'll also drop into the right and left, depending on what side of the pitch he's on. Kobe Menu, deep line playmaker on support. You could have, if you wanted, dribble more as a more of a well-rounded role for Menu. He didn't do it so much at the weekend because his role was a little bit more restrictive. However, that is definitely something you could change. The forward 4, the front 4, or the strikerless 4. Garnacho wing on attack, no play instructions. Bruno Fernandes, we've gone for, obviously, roam from position, more direct passes. And you could actually as well, because he's not a great dribbler, you could do dribble less, but I've left that off. AP on support and not attack, just so we have him just sitting a little bit deeper. He'll come and play with Amrabat and Menu, maybe the fullback, and allow the other 3 to go a little bit higher. Scott McTominay, attacking midfielder on attack with the player instruction of dribble more. We didn't see it much for him, but he is a really good carrier of the ball. And I think if Man United got more transitional moments, you would have probably seen him carrying the ball a lot more. So McTominay, AM on attack, dribble more. You could potentially as well do tackle harder because he does like to fly in those tackles. Marcus Rashford, inside forward. And I have got sit narrower just to help a little bit with our positioning. I know it's an in-possession instruction, but what I'm trying to create is him not being so wide so that when we get the ball turned over and we're transitioning into a defence, into that 4-2-4 shape, that he will be in a better position to sit narrow and he's not hugging the touchline and then having to dart in, if that makes sense. He wanted to try and keep away a little bit from Kyle Walker. So what we're trying to exploit is that space there, maybe between the centre halves and the fullback rather than on the outside of the fullback. So that's why I've got that sit narrower on. Right, mentality balance. I think that gives us a really good balance between the players that were literally there to defend and the players that had a little bit of license, those front 4, to get forward and attack. In possession, pass into space, the goals, both goals were balls into the forward areas. In particular, the first one, that was a pass into space for Garnacho to chase, or pass into space. We've gone fairly narrow as well, just to help with our transition. Being a little bit more compact will help Man United get in to make that 4-2-4 even quicker. Play out of defence, and I've also gone focus play through the middle. Standard directness passing, I've done that because of not Højlund. I was a little bit worried that if we'd have gone with Højlund, it would have just been launched balls up. So I'm quite happy that Man United, when they had the opportunity to try to play through the lines, in particular in the first half, tried their best as well to keep possession when they could. Time wasting, I've done never, but that was because we were playing Wolves. By all means, that should probably sometimes, depending on your opponents. Everything else left off. In transition, there was a little bit of a counter. They pressed early on against Manchester City remember when Ortega had that little pass in and Bruno won it in the penalty area. They had little moments where they could sense maybe Man City being a little bit scruffy in possession. But in general, I'm going to leave that off. And I think then that gives you, once again, that little bit of realistic feel of sometimes they'll do it, sometimes they'll regroup, depending on the situation. Counter-attacking, obviously. Everything else left blank. I've left Onana off. You could probably, because he's on sweeper, keep on attack. If you see him firing balls too far forward, and I've not had it in the game against Wolves, I've done this replication 3 times as well. You could probably just distribute to centre-halves if over the course of the season you're finding that he's playing it too long. Out of position, we've done mid-block. Get that 4-2-4 mid-block in. Get stuck in, because when it went in there, Amrabat, Menu, Fernandes, McTominay, really aggressive in getting the ball back. But having that trigger press as standard, and remember, we want that narrow 4, so trapping the ball outside, waiting for that ball to go outside. If we had it left off, it would maybe allow the players to be a little bit more spread out across the pitch. If we had trap inside as well, that would have the players coming from, in particular the fullbacks and the wingers, going out and pressing their fullbacks and forcing them in. Whereas this time we really want them to be narrow as possible and allowing them to play it outside. And then once the ball goes outside, then United will shuffle across. Garnacho and Rashford did really well. In particular, Garnacho working really well to get back in and helping his fullback. Okay, that is the first one. Remember those player instructions. Depending on who you're playing, you can leave off this, so you don't press the centre halves, and then you press any pivots, any single pivots or double pivots that they've got in those holding midfield roles. Now, this is the second one. Now, I absolutely love this tactic, and as I said earlier in the video, it is going to be something that I will be using, I think, when I do my new challenge, because I've really enjoyed watching the movements of the F9 and Fernandes. However, it doesn't quite give us that feel of how Man United played in the FA Cup final. So I'm going to show you a couple of clips. Now, I'm going to show you the first clip, just because it's a fantastic goal, and it kind of highlights the problem with maybe being the F9 just been a little bit too high. So it's a really good goal. It's like a beautiful goal, but look at his position. He's so high. He's on the centre half. Now, he does drop off and fire it in. If we show the clip again, he's up and around that centre half where he wouldn't be. He would be a little bit squarer to Manu at the moment. However, with that F9, you do get that little bit of movement where he drops off, finds a little bit of space and turns and then has that shot. So that is how the F9 works superbly well in a system like this, where they'll go in and engage with a centre half, and then to find that little bit of movement, to find that little bit of space, they'll make that movement towards the ball. And then obviously with Fernandes with his long shots, turns and hits, scores a wonderful goal. However, that wasn't really how United played at the weekend. And then this one again, if we just watch, we've had a throw-in on the left-hand side, and he's just keeping a really high position. Now, we ended up scoring a goal, which is great. So once again, I'm not criticising the tactic. If you want to use the tactic, you can. But if we just bring it back a little bit, as the play develops, he kind of stays amongst them centre-halves. And I think if it wasn't, it would be a little bit more towards Amrabat and Menu, probably picking up that pocket right there, picking up that pocket and then trying to slip in a McTominay, a Garnacho or a Rashford. This one as well, so we've just scored, and the ball comes back. As you can see, Fernandes is really high in possession. This is the F9 and the issues that we get. Now, it's not an issue in terms of the role itself. It's an issue in terms of because we're trying to make it as realistic as we possibly can. And what we really want from Fernandes is to be, maybe 20 yards deeper. We want him to be in front of those two DMs right there. So we want him in this area right here. And that's the issue that we sometimes get with the F9. This one, I think, just shows you what we really don't from Bruno. You want Bruno with him facing the play because he's so good at threading passes and long balls, long direct balls. And with the F9, he plays with his back to goal a lot. So just watch his movement. Like, he's got his back to goal. He's going to have to receive a pass with his back to goal. He's back to goal. He's back to goal. He's staying really high. And the ball is eventually cleared. But just something to be aware of, that F9 generally will not turn and have space in front of him, players running off him. He'll have to turn and kind of pop it off a little bit. Plays with his back to goal, which Fernandes has done in other iterations of this strikerless tactic. He's often played up front by himself and played much more of an F9 striker. But for this one, he was in the FA Cup, he was very much facing play rather than with his back to play. And the last one is just a clip of what he does out of possession. Like, because of him playing that F9, as you can see, he's kind of floating about. Remember the other clip that I showed you? So if we stop it right here, look where he is out of possession. Not into that 4. He's marking one of the defenders, I think, as well, because Doyle and Lamina are now in front. Now, what we don't want is that scenario where we're a little bit spread, in that 4-2-4 shape that I showed you. He would be pretty much where this pass is going to travel from Doyle, look, into Lamina. We don't want that. We don't want that. Okay, so that is another thing to be aware of. The F9 will generally start higher and then drop in. The tactic itself is exactly the same. The only changes I've made is the AM on support for McTominay and then the F9 obviously on support for Fernandes. That's the only two changes I've made. Alright guys, I hope you've enjoyed it. Like the tactic, we've played Wolves 3 times. I've won 3-0, 3-1, 3-0. The goal was from a penalty. And at the same time, like, I think if you want to be pure Ten Hag FA Cup genius, it's the first one. If you want to probably have a little bit more success going forward, the Ten Hag FA Cup F9 tactic with Fernandes starting as that F9 will probably act a little bit better. So I've given you both options there today. I hope you've enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed putting this together, put a little bit more extra work in watching the FA Cup final back. Full highlight, full game, by the way, is on YouTube, so you go check that out if you're wanting to relive it as a Man United fan. I'm still thinking Ten Hag out. I think there will be a video on the next Manchester United manager that I would like to see realistically now. Let me know your thoughts on Ten Hag down in the comments. Hope you've enjoyed it. See you later.